Good morning to everyone in the room and everyone online. I am so surprised not to see some animals. But then you might not fit in those seats. Yesterday was a banner day here in Portland, yes. We are a spiritually alive, multi-generational, religiously diverse, and justice-centered community, and we are so glad that you are here in this room or joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, or Boxcast right from our website. It is so good to be here together. Now, some of you met my friend last week. We learned he was an axolotl. True furry, scaly, and feathery friends are welcome at 4 o'clock today for an animal blessing, and we're going to move it inside. And Tom and I can't wait to bless your animals. And on a more solemn note, sometimes people bring photographs of beloveds who are now deceased, and we bless those as well. And stuffed animals are welcome. All kinds of friends are welcome at 4 o'clock in Fuller Hall. We are so delighted in this month of interdependence to welcome our second speaker, who is one of our Unitarian Universalists on the front lines these days. And Pablo DeJesús, who is here with us, is the Executive Director of UUSJ for Social Justice. He has a background in government affairs, and he served in the office of the Governor of Puerto Rico, first at its planning board in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then at its Federal Affairs Administration in Washington, D.C. Before joining the UUSJ for Social Justice, he consulted with faith-based organizations and nonprofits in New York and New Jersey, and worked on issue campaigns in Maryland and Colorado. And he is also a member of All Souls in D.C., one of our sibling churches. We are so delighted to have him with us here today. There will be a Q&A following the service in Fuller Hall. And with that, I want to invite you to turn to your neighbors online or here in the room and let us greet one another. I love that enthusiasm. Since we ring our bell to come back together, we're a 3-ring service together. That's David's joke. Elliot is up here to help us light our chalice this morning, and he'll also be sharing in our story in just a little bit. Let us recite our affirmation as he lights the symbol of our faith. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love. Thank you. Perfect. Our call to worship this morning is the task of the religious community by the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amidst the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of the larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength is too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed.
I'm Leah. I'm Gary, your acting director of Lifespan Faith Formation, and this is Elliot, one of our youth leaders. For our theme of interdependence, we have a story about friends exploring how it is that they belong to and with each other. And we need your help with a call and response that happens a little bit later in the story. When we say floop, floop, you also have to do the tongue twister. You have to respond by saying floop, floop, floop. Okay, so we're gonna practice that. So we'll say it twice, and then you say it 3 times. Floop, 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 floop. Okay, remember that. Elliot is already wearing his porcupine t-shirt, and so now I also must transform. Okay. A Friendship Yarn by Lisa Moser, illustrated by Olga Demidova.
Badger and Porcupine met under the walnut tree and shared a pot of tea like they did every morning. As the day warmed up, Porcupine helped Badger rake leaves, and Badger helped Porcupine stir a big pot of apple butter.
Badger sniffed the air. Winter weather is coming.
That's a cold cup of tea, sighed Porcupine. I'll have to gather firewood. This is my last log.
Don't worry, said Badger. I'll help you.
You're such a dear friend, said Porcupine. The 2 friends walked into the woods to gather logs. Porcupine took the high trail, Badger took the low one. A peddler's cart jingled down the road. A ball of yarn tumbled out and unrolled and unrolled and unrolled. A bright-colored string of yarn stretched out the length of the woods. Porcupine picked up one end of the yarn.
Far away, Badger picked up the other end of the yarn. Come back, called Badger.
You lost your yarn, called Porcupine.
Keep it, said the peddler, waving merrily. Don't have time to stop. Badger looked at the yarn. I can pick up logs later. I'll use this yarn to knit a backpack for picnics with Porcupine. Badger ran home, jumped over her pile of books, and dove under the bed for her knitting needles.
Porcupine looked at her yarn. Well, fill my sugar bowl. Who needs logs? This is exactly what I need to make a lovely tablecloth for tea time with Badger. She dashed home and pulled her knitting needs out of her tidy sewing basket.
Clickety-click, snickety-snick went Badger's needles. But when she had only 3 stitches to go, the whole thing unraveled. Floop, 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 floop.
Clickety-click, snickety-snick went Porcupine's needles. But when she only had 3 stitches to go, the whole thing unraveled. Floop, floop. Porcupine followed the yarn to Badger's house. I think you have my yarn, said Porcupine.
This is my yarn, said Badger. The peddler gave it to me.
Well, flatten my cake. You're wrong, said Porcupine. The peddler gave it to me. She stomped back to her house. Cookie crumbles, said Porcupine. I'll make something for myself. A tail for my kite. Clickety-click, snickety-snick, floop, floop.
Ooh, a rain cloud, said Badger. I'll knit a hat to keep warm and dry. Too bad for Porcupine. Clickety-click, snickety-snick, floop, 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 floop.
A net to catch walnuts, said Porcupine. Clickety-click, snickety-snick, floop, floop.
Floop, floop, floop. A hammock for me, and just me, said Badger. Clickety-click, snickety-snick, floop, 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 floop.
A tent to hide in, said Porcupine, so I never have to see Badger again. Clickety-click, snickety-snick, floop, floop.
Floop, floop, floop. A sail for my boat, said Badger, so I can sail far, far away from Porcupine. Clickety-click, snickety-snick,
Floop, floop.
floop, floop, floop. Badger pounded on Porcupine's door. Give me back my yarn!
It's mine, cried Porcupine.
Mine, yelled Badger.
You're not my friend anymore, said Porcupine.
I don't want to be your friend, and I don't want to be your neighbor, said Badger.
I can fix this, said Porcupine. She went to her sewing basket and cut the yarn in half.
I'm leaving and I'm never coming back, yelled Badger. Holding her yarn, she ran into the woods.
Hours passed, Porcupine huddled by her empty fireplace. A snowstorm whistled down the chimney. Badger is my friend, and she will be cold and lonely out there. I have to help her. Porcupine pulled out her knitting needles. She headed into the cold, dark night.
Badger hunkered down in an old log and worried. It's getting colder every minute, and Porcupine is out of firewood. She'll be freezing. She's my friend. I have to help her. Badger pulled out her knitting needles. She headed into the cold, dark night.
Clickety, clickety, snickety, snickety, click, snick. Oof! Porcupine and Badger ran straight into each other. Well, polish my silver, said Porcupine. I found you. You're safe. Put on this sweater I knit for you.
Quick, said Badger. It's freezing out here. Put on this sweater I knit for you.
Porcupine and Badger admired their new sweaters. I'm sorry we fought, said Porcupine.
Me too, said Badger.
Will you come over for toast and apple butter? Asked Porcupine.
Love to, said Badger, picking up a bunch of logs. You're going to need these.
The two friends headed home together into the night that didn't feel so very cold or very dark after all. The end.
It's time to move next door for religious education. I especially invite any new families to come with us. If you meet us in the lobby, we will be happy to show you where we go. And let's all sing together.
Good morning, everyone. A moment to talk about what's happening here at our church today. There will be a social hour after the service in Fuller Hall, immediately below this sanctuary. If you're new to First Unitarian Church, we welcome you to stop by our newcomers table in the lobby, or there's a First Connections table downstairs in social hour. Come and check out information about the church and meet some of our volunteers. We'd love to welcome you here to the church. This is the third Sunday of the month when we highlight our social justice ministry during social hour. Join us after the service for fellowship, singing a few songs for justice. Visit our social justice action group tables and ask your questions of our guest preacher, Pablo, today after the service. He'll be down in social hour. And I would like to introduce Jean Pierce, who's going to offer a testimony about the work of UUs for social justice. Jean.
Thank you. Actually, I'm beginning by talking about our latest social justice team, Democracy in Action. So, why do you care about democracy? During Trump's first term, I was shocked to see how fragile our democracy appeared to be. Now I'm seeing the effect of an authoritarian takeover on people I love. I have 5 grandchildren. 4 of them have special needs. And yet, with the dismantling of the Department of Education and, just within the last week, the Office of Special Ed Programs, it's unclear who will administer funding and provisions of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This is not what democracy looks like. Then there's my Cambodian American goddaughter, who lost the job she loved when Voices of America was silenced earlier this year. This remarkable organization brought uncensored information to people in countries where the press was not free. I'll never forget when I took her to a protest rally about 10 years ago. A policeman drove up to us. She absolutely froze. It turned out he was only giving us some friendly advice about not littering. I assured her we didn't need to fear law enforcement in here as they do in Cambodia. She couldn't believe her ears. And now we have unmarked agents snatching citizens off our streets without due process, warrants, or cause. This, too, is not what democracy looks like. More personally, I am one of 69 million women who could become disenfranchised. I changed my name when I married. If the SAVE Act or the Election Assistance Commission rules that my voter registration must match the name on my birth certificate, the minute I move, I will not be able to renew my registration. This certainly is not what democracy looks like. But at the same time, I firmly believe in the adage, don't agonize, organize. I think that First U has an obligation to defend our democracy. Our 5th principle concerns the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within congregations and in society at large. This summer, the Democracy in Action team was born at First U. It evolved from our church's social justice collaboration team. Since threats to democracy relate to a number of our social justice group's goals, this was natural. So far, we have engaged over 400 members of our congregation in resistance actions, such as marching, hanging signs on bridges, postcard writing, learning about resistance, and de-escalation trainings. I personally find that it's fulfilling to work with others who share my concerns and hopes. So, come visit the Democracy in Action table during coffee hour in Fuller Hall. Tell us why democracy matters to you. Pick up some chalk to write a pro-democracy message on your sidewalk. Get a card to write a thank you to Portland City Councilors for their actions pushing back on ICE. Sign up to get information about upcoming events. And of course, pick up a cookie. We need everyone in this fight. I'll see you soon. Now I'm putting on a different hat. Today's offering is for the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, UUSJ. Some of you know I'm on the board of trustees of UUSJ. We ensure that UUs have a voice in federal policies, and isn't that crucial these days? Thanks to the work of our executive director and our volunteer-driven action teams, we select issues that are moving in Congress when Congress is functioning, arrange meetings between UUs and congressional staff, publicize action alerts, conduct conferences, workshops, webinars, and briefings, participate as UUs in many important coalition spaces, and organize or promote witness activities. I am part of the UUSJ Democracy in Action team, which is actively working to build a collaborative pro-democracy movement. All of this takes resources, money, attention, and participation. You might be surprised to hear that although UUSJ is our de facto UU federal ministry, the UUA does not fund this separate 501c3 nonprofit. We depend entirely on donations as we build a UU movement for federal advocacy. We operate with a slim staff, but very powerful, complementing leveraging the passion and commitment of UU volunteers to have a meaningful impact well beyond what our budget would suggest. We punch above our weight class, but we could do more to meet the moment. Think about what we could do with your support, with robust participation by First U. Please give generously to UUSJ and sign up at the Democracy in Action table to receive invaluable mailings from UUSJ.
We make space in our service every Sunday for the concerns of our community life together. We offer pastoral support through our ministers and through our lay ministers. You can light a candle of intention in one of our side galleries. You can leave a prayer request to be held through the week. And if you're online, you can submit that to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. The chancel flowers today are given in memory of Carol Sanderson. Carol's memorial service will be held this afternoon at 2 o'clock in our Elliott Chapel. She died on May the 17th at the age of 86, and she had been a member of this congregation way back since 1968. A memorial service has been scheduled for member Judy Wilder. Judy died on October the 6th. Her service will be next Friday, October the 24th at 11 o'clock in our Elliott Chapel. Will you join me now in prayer? Spirit of life and of love, God of many names and of no name at all, be with us. We begin, Spirit, in gratitude for this day and for all the blessings we know, for autumn colors, for rain and for sunshine, for all of creation of which we are a part. And we hold up the prayers of our lives, that all your children might know love and care, that all your children might be safe from harm, especially the most vulnerable among us, immigrants, our trans siblings, those who don't have shelter, especially as these nights grow colder and wetter. Be with us too in our prayers for justice, prayers for our city, for our country, for leaders who work for all the people and for the common good, for leaders who first strive to do no harm. In these times of trouble, help us to give thanks for frogs, for people marching together, for all who help us find hope in these days. Spirit, in a world that seems so broken, help us to do our part to heal this world. Remind us over and over again that we are not alone. Remind us of all that connects us to each other and to the earth. Help us, Spirit, as we find our way, grounded in courage, grounded in hope, grounded in love. Amen. Let's keep silent now for a few moments together. And let us sing our doxology now. Spirit of life, I'd invite you to stand. Our reading today comes from Marianne Larsen, a Danish poet, entitled Ordinary Human Arms. We put our arms around each other, a pair of ordinary tax-paying human arms, not to rest them, but to harden them. A pair of ordinary, concrete, accustomed, and marketed human arms, a pair of ordinarily needing, a pair of ordinarily hugging human arms. We put them around each other. They are health-insured and ordinarily dressed, a pair of ordinary love-interpreting human arms. How strong they are, sovereign, independent, no matter where, no matter what the hour, no matter what the season, suddenly and for all time, human arms. Without speculation, we put them around each other as if to show that their powerlessness doesn't exist.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, the lovely service. I want to flag, I so love Spirit of Life, but you guys threw me. I'm accustomed to then following the English version with a Spanish version. It's part of our welcoming practices at All Souls in Washington, D.C., and I encourage you to investigate that as an option and possibility here. Beloveds, a First Unitarian, peace to you in the name of love, both practical and sacred. I was thinking about you, I've been talking about you, I've been responding to the fact that Portland in particular and Oregon generally are in the news recently. And I was having a conversation with someone who was frankly sort of throwing shade, to use that youthful phrase, about Portland, and really they were sort of disparaging the state as a whole. And I immediately came back, that's not true. I collaborate with folks in Oregon who care deeply for justice, equity, and their communities. And they put compassion into their action. They came back with some comments about posture on issues and disagreement about worldview and political tilt and inclinations, and I think fundamentally they were talking about the white supremacist and militia culture here in the state. And I said, well, I can only speak from my perspective because I haven't ever been to Portland or Oregon before this visit. But I do collaborate with folks in state, and while we don't always see eye to eye, I know we agree heart to heart most of the time. And when I've asked them to be present, many have joined me shoulder to shoulder in the work. And isn't that what matters most in times like these? And to be candid, I was thinking about UUs in general, our volunteerism, our various ministries, our witness, our advocacy, but First U in part, I was thinking about you all. Your reputation precedes you. I've had the honor and the pleasure of getting to know Reverend Sinkford at All Souls in Washington, D.C. while he was our minister. I have members of your community in our organization. And I know that you showcase compassion. You actively build community. You care for your neighbors. You live an expansive version of belonging. You have shown over and over again that you belong to each other. You belong to that pesky tribe of people who put hand to the tiller and the oar. You navigate through tough terrain and choppy seas, and for the most part, you arrive together. And even though you didn't know it, you belong to UUSJ, and we to you. We are optimists, idealists, pragmatists in pursuit of justice. You are a testament to the compassion, the fellowship, and the solidarity that we need. The weaving of love into a tapestry of justice. As UUs, we belong to each other in the work for justice on behalf of love. That is foundational to our covenant. So I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor in the pew and say, we belong to each other. Now turn the other way and say, I'm in covenant with you. I feel that's a legacy of care worth remembering and celebrating in this season of high tension and low forbearance. Because by all accounts and signals, here in the United States, we're in for some troubled waters. We're in for a winter of discontent, as Shakespeare put it. At least for the most vulnerable among us. As things get challenging, I want you to remember we have been together in this work through ebbs and flows of energy and focus, attention, and desire for the work at hand. And this relationship of ours as UUs has endured. The fellowship has been maintained. We have shown a capacity for spiritually disciplined engagement. And we will need more of that to build it out further. To start with our denomination, then our houses of worship, your church, and take it beyond. We must find other communities of like mind and similar spirit and begin journeying together in defense of our democracy. We must relearn our skill for the great weaving. So in special recognition to my partner in this budding relationship of belonging with First U, I want to just recognize Jean. And I also want to mention with profound gratitude another local, Reverend Connie Yost, with whom I regularly collaborate around Poor People's Campaign and economic justice issues and farmer issues. And of course, I have the utmost respect for the great UU teacher, Reverend Sinkford. But I've enjoyed getting to know your Reverend Allison and Dana. And I appreciate them and the attention that they've given me on this trip And I invite you to do the same. UUSJ needs your attention to meet the moment, and some of your financial resources are welcome. I sincerely hope, more than anything, that first you will consider joining UUSJ as a partner congregation. It's really helpful when we engage with Capitol Hill to say, we represent you. We are your voice in DC. We are your federal ministry. And frankly, our principal constraint at UUSJ is resources. It's not a lack of clarity or creativity, know-how or gumption. It's the resources to execute at the level that you expect and the moment demands. It's your attention amid the many demands for your social justice compassion. So more than anything this morning, I want our time together to be seen as a personal message of thanks for your fortitude and commitment for justice. We belong to each other as partners in this faith-centered love. We have covenanted to hold each other in care and compassion. And living up to those commitments can be difficult, but we need each other. We need deep-throated boosters for our positive, inclusive vision of America. We need steel-spined defenders of compassion and care. Our nation needs that. We belong to that circle of dreamers who believe in a beloved community and universal belonging, and we take action to bring it into being. So in that context, I want to recognize you as those who have actually been living and loving on one of the battlefronts in this season of transformation in our body politic. A shift has been in progress for some time, and in many ways was in fact telegraphed here in Oregon because of the deeply rooted white supremacist and militia culture. However, the narrative contest being fought here forecasts as much as it reflects the cold season in our nation's capital. Unfortunately, now we're facing a season where the winds of power have shifted, and it is much the same elsewhere in the United States. Now, the version of federalism that has descended upon us as we the people is bringing challenges to free speech, access to the ballot box, a seeming disregard for constitutional norms, an indifference to local community autonomy, and an apparent ease with unlawfulness. Those challenges, combined with an appetite for political retribution, makes this a particularly bitter moment. This is no longer about political or policy differences. This is now about what it means to be an American, to belong to this great optimistic humanist experiment in democracy. Or maybe it always has been. Maybe that is the trial at the core of our American identity. Bottom line, everybody's at risk. Everyone who belongs to our tribe of optimists seems to be targeted. Climate justice activists and the nonprofits that they serve, racial justice advocates, and the community-based organizations that drive the work, agitators for LGBTQ equality and rights, and the networks they are a part of, defenders of dignity for trans people, and the caring systems they utilize, advocates for the poor, and the institutions that serve the humble, DACA recipients, and even dreamers, as well as refugees and asylum seekers, and the communities that embrace them. Even the children, especially the kids, and the families that are rearing them. And the lawyers, the judges, the doctors, the clergy, the social workers, the civil servants, the scientists, and all the professions they pertain to. This moment is leaving us all feeling under constant assault, personally or by extension through our kith and our kin. We're feeling at the mercy of that bone-chilling wind. The tapestry of justice we have been weaving since the merger of our two houses, Unitarian and Universalist, is being frayed. Here, in one of the epicenters of intense federal activity and scrutiny, you're more familiar with that than most. Make no mistake, you are being positioned as one of the boogeymen nationally, among several, that will excuse the deployment of the National Guard with an eye towards a declaration of the Insurrection Act to dampen voter participation and further authoritarian consolidation activity. So this winter of discontent has brought you an increased military and police presence in your streets, in your communities, according to certain reports at least. And now, with the Supreme Court permitting what amounts to indiscriminate profiling, it's likely to get worse. In fact, we're upon the precipice of racial authoritarianism akin to Jim Crow. Some say we're moving in the direction of a de facto dictatorship or an apartheid state. And if you're wondering about that attitude, go ask the obviously foreign-born individuals in your social networks. How are they feeling? Go ask the farm workers. I mean, you guys are a fairly rural and farming-oriented state. Papiris, please, if you please. Madame, sir. By all accounts, they're not being that polite when they're stopping people on the streets. Maybe, or many people feel compelled to carry their papers all the time, yet they're unsure if those papers and documents will actually protect them. And they're not alone, because we belong to each other. We belong together. For example, I worry that my real ID driver's license is insufficient and I should get a passport. I worry about traveling to and from my wife's hometown of El Paso, Texas, or frankly, Colorado, where we have other family members. Certainly Puerto Rico, where my family is from. We as a household worry about my 9-year-old. How would he prove that he's a citizen if he gets swept up in some operation or something? Because ICE is approaching schools, at least on the East Coast. And whether or not he knows 3 telephone numbers in case there's a problem. Will he actually remember them under stress? And who would we call as a household? We don't have any lawyers in our family. What would we do? And I, as a politics and policy guy, think to myself, is that Thomas Jefferson's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Are those the constitutional rights, freedoms, and protections ensured by our country's Constitution? Is that the form of Republican government that we separated from monarchy to achieve? I was on a call with national leaders in the civil rights policy space. The through line in their comments was, it's probably going to get worse, a lot worse. We need to stick together. We need to show fellowship and solidarity to get through it. We need to remember that we belong to each other. And I've been thinking to myself that if being a nation that adheres to agreed upon covenants and conventions of our Constitution means being for law and order, well, I'm all for that. But if being for law and order is about a thinly veiled accusation that I, my wife, or my child, or our family networks don't belong here, then I will defy and resist that with every fiber of my being. And I will invite you to join me. Friends of First UU, we need to remind ourselves that we are compatriots for a progressive, pluralistic, and inclusive America. That is the America to which we belong. Do it again. Turn to your neighbor and say, we belong to each other. Turn the other way and say, we are woven together. Most recently, locally in DC, where I reside, as you know, we've been experiencing the intimidation of our youth populations and our unhoused populations. And we've been sounding the alarm about that kind of treatment, trying to warn places like Portland. And according to most community reports, the focus of rounding up and targeting the unhoused was primarily a pretext for going after immigrant folks. And the emphasis on the youth was a coordinated punishment of black young males. And I think we have to name that and understand what's actually going on. My friends, you need to be vigilant. You are part of who they're targeting. They are coming after you, and we all need to be watchful. We all need to mind the othering and shift in that narrative about who belongs, who merits compassion and care, and who can claim membership in our communities. History teaches us that when such a winter of discontent descends upon us, the winds cut hardest for those who are poor, marginalized, and othered. To use the biblical frame, those who are the stranger or the sojourner. Make no mistake, you are a stranger to the pernicious fellowship in favor of a minimalist democracy, a republic of plutocracy and oligarchy, adherence to a Unitarian theory of executive power. You are foreign to that. Exodus 2:22 King James is somewhat apt in my mind. We're all strangers in a strange land, one that increasingly celebrates autocracy, authoritarianism, flirts with Christian theocracy, and openly embraces Nazism. We are all cognitive foreigners in that realm. Have you seen the viral videos of people saying, yes, I'm a fascist, or some version of, well, I want to use the democratic process to achieve a religious state? Have you seen the chats by young Republican activists declaring, I love Hitler, to each other? Many of us yearn to return to our promised land of freedom and liberty, even if it was imperfect. Our faith rejects othering and hate. Our faith embraces democratic process. We boldly explore the unknown. We gladly lean into, with curiosity, fellowship. We recognize the common humanity that unites us all. We welcome the stranger with care and compassion. We proudly attest that we are all born in original blessing and we belong to each other in that great human family. We are weavers. We bind belonging to compassion, fellowship, and solidarity, and we bring them together into a whole tapestry for justice. Yet it's not just the stranger under attack. It is all of us in our care and compassion for others, in that weaving. History also teaches us that these winds can be sharp for those of us who have the moral fortitude and the spiritual discipline to resist and defy Caesar, Rome, the hegemony, as it tries to convince us to forsake our power, to trick us into thinking that we are alone in our fear, alone in our consternation, and alone in our desire to object. Those winds can be bitter for those of us who maintain a commitment to universal community in humankind. And in such an hour, we must remember that we do not serve the state, but instead we consent to be governed by it. And we are the conscience of our own body politic. That is where our spiritual discipline belongs. Our sacred texts and faith tradition call us to lead with moral courage rather than following in fear or turning a blind eye to injustice. We must remember that. As a faith tradition, we remain to be silent, for we know silence equals consent. That is our axiom for delivering care in community, in fellowship, in this great weaving. So we must remember, we can also withdraw our consent in ways big and small. We need to lean into every instance, each small effort, and every act of defiance that we can manage. Each time we lean into the example of the Buddha or the Good Samaritan, we're working to bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. Each time we recall a biblical proverb or a hadith that teaches us mercy, compassion, and community care, we are living into love as a sacred religious value. So I ask you to continue taking your place shoulder to shoulder, both literally and figuratively, with those who are suffering. And with gusto, I ask you to turn to your neighbor and say, we belong to each other. And I ask you to say, I see you. And I ask you to remember all those who dwell in the shadows, to see those who are suffering the plagues of indifference and hate. For we know those are the age-old evils of humankind. And remember, we belong to each other. Let the people around you know that First You has not forgotten or forsaken them. Declare publicly and loudly that your faith is grounded in love. Roar like a pride of lions that your faith, our tradition, has sympathy and offers fellowship. Sing as a songbird. Our faith provides solidarity and succor, and we are unafraid to confront root harms. Buzz in joy that ours is a living tradition woven for justice. And I urge you to act together in community. Work mightily to establish unanimity of purpose within your halls. Take that purpose beyond your walls and strive to journey with others of like mind and similar spirit. Weave your power into the wider community. Widen your circle of concern for our democracy, for your community. Act across denominational lines and across the boundaries of race, ethnicity, and creed and tradition. Carefully and tenderly explore common moral concerns across political lines with your neighbors. Polling indicates that most Americans are dissatisfied with what they see going on. We have to learn or relearn how to invite people into relationship on this matter of our backsliding democracy. Actively announce that First You will continue to join synagogues, mosques, temples, community-based organizations, service-providing ministries, and all people of goodwill and conscience in common concern for our neighbors and our republic. Collaborate with Oregon UU Voices and UUSJ. Support the needed work. Yes, I'm saying go bring some verve and some zeal for this work into other spaces. Remind everyone this bitter wind can drown out any single voice. But together, we can be a mighty chorus. Unbound by fear, we are beyond silencing. And what does that mean specifically? Well, practice non-cooperation and nonviolent action in all its various forms. Get comfortable with that, y'all. But it should not begin with a cathartic impulse to lash out and bash. Instead, it's got to be starting from a place of faithful affirmation, spiritual discipline within the self and the congregation, and then out into the community. When we engage in interfaith prayers, vigils, public witness, and prophetic preaching, we are confronting immoral policies that cause harm. That is part of the loving work. When we show care and compassion, we're challenging the immoral politics that debilitate those who are being othered and made into villains. When we engage in service and ministry planning, we're coordinating for mutual aid and preparing community resilience. That is holy work. When we live into liberatory theology, we are weaving justice. This is loving work, and it must be done. We must act in these ways, both strategic and practical. We must find the spiritual steel for the moment, the fortitude to persevere in the face of howling bitter winds. This might take a long time. The winds are sharp. You might feel overwhelmed by the tasks at hand. However, faith-grounded spiritual discipline requires that we cultivate our hope. So we've got to learn something else or remind ourselves of something else. The morning always comes. The winds eventually shift. The people's progress is always the spring thaw to the winter. For every contraction or re-entrenchment, eventually we see an expansion and a flowering. For we know that the long arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, but injustice is rather rigid and persistent as a human tendency. And that is the struggle that requires our compassion and our focus. To bend that arc requires many hands shaping the curve with love. That is where we belong. It's an effort where each person must weave their bit of the cloth, and each generation grasps a corner of that mutual tapestry. That is our community. That is what we at UUSJ do. Our part is bringing an unremitting Unitarian Universalist presence to the federal forum. It's never easy, but it's always worthwhile and meaningful, never more than now. So that's why, First U, I say we belong to each other. And on behalf of UUSJ, we welcome your support of this work through your attention and donations. But more importantly, please remember to side with love, feed your spirit, defy hate with joy, and yes, in the case of Portland, continue to be weird and quirky. Refrain from indifference, remain in fellowship, rest when you need to. Never forget that we are the ones that we have been waiting for, because we are the weavers and we belong to each other. Omateo, Amen, Ashe. Blessings, First U. Thank you.
Coffee together downstairs, 4 o'clock animal blessing service. Beloveds, we have been charged. Let us take it to heart, and then let us act in the world. Let us never forget that we belong to one another. And let us share it to those in our community that may not hear that enough. And now, in our going, may the light of love bless us and keep us. May it shine down upon us. May it be gracious unto us. And may it make each one of us into lions, into songbirds, into buzzers like bees, bringing the sweet honey of joy resistance, and a commitment to our liberatory theology. For this is the day that you and I are given, so let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.